Welcome back. You are joining us, I should say, from Houston, Texas. It is March 20th. My name is Judy Blake, and I am the Leadership and Advocacy Coordinator with Family to Family Network. Our next section will be similar in that it shows you people making a difference. It shows you people making it happen, and other great resources for you to tap into so that you can make sure that your loved one, regardless of disability, can still work and find meaningful employment. I had the honor of meeting Ricky Broussard about 5 years ago, and he is so kind, so accomplished, and his story is really incredible. Ricky, if there was someone who truly defied the odds, you are that person. And Ricky, just so y'all know, you can say that you know someone famous. Ricky has legislation named after him. So that is like uber cool in Judy's world. So Norine, I'm going to have you go ahead and share your screen. And talk about natural supports and everything. Norine works with Ricky to make sure that he does have meaningful employment and can be successful. And Norine, you're just a great gal. You really are. So go ahead and share your slide, and you're going to hear the amazing story of Ricky Broussard. Ricky, it's about 10:20. So let's have you take about 30 minutes or so. And then people can ask you questions. And then our last section will be Norine.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Miss Judy.
My pleasure.
And like Miss Judy said, my name is Ricky Broussard, and I am the I work for Imagine Enterprises, and I am the peer support leader for Imagine Enterprises. I've and what I'm going to talk to you today about is the 5 principles of self-determination. And there are supports, confirmation, authority, responsibility, and freedom. And Noreen, if you don't mind, can you help me out when I need some help, please?
Oh yeah, always.
Okay. And and what I'm going to talk to you about is the principles of self-determination and how it has helped me uh, live my life the way I live doing it. And 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 one is is having okay. Uh,
So Ricky, one of the things that we when we started working on self-determination together, one of the things we didn't have consumer directed services yet.
no.
Right. So you were still living in an institutional setting,
Mm-hmm.
right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But self-determination is actually kind of one of those words that everybody throws around, and we all think we're talking the same language.
True.
So this is a little bit different in that it does give you more control, right?
Mm-hmm. And and the way it gives me more control, I um I have cerebral palsy, and I I live on my own. I stay in my own apartment in a 1 bedroom, and um uh I have the control over my life, and I actually can say who comes in and who touches my body when I want them to, because because okay, uh and 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 my one of my jobs for working for Imagine, um I like I said, I am the peer leader and the support, and I help other individuals, and I train them on self advocacy, and self-determination, and I help them uh, have I help them talk to legislators and how they can have a meaningful life like I have.
So did you want to share this PowerPoint about that you put together for the ADA, the celebration of the ADA?
Yes, and actually this is one of the videos that I was talking about. So
Oh, okay. All
so
right.
here's a video that can tell you a little bit more about me.
All right. Let me see if I can't get it to behave for me. I hope it works.
Yeah.
Oops, nope. Let me see.
Yeah, videos can be challenging.
Yes.
Yeah, there's something that says that it's been locked because there's some concern.
If you want to send me the link to the video, please do that, and then people can watch it.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great. Sorry,
So,
Ricky.
yeah, because it's a really cool video. It's actually a video that Ricky put together in celebration of the ADA, and so he actually, the video was a part of an effort that was put together by NPR,
Mm-hmm.
National Public Radio, and some other public TV stations. So this
Yeah.
cute picture over here on the right is Ricky when we were about 10.
Yeah, about 10.
Yeah, and this is the dude now with his Imagine Enterprises t-shirt. And what's
Yeah.
that in the background?
That in the background, that is one of my vans. The because I'm on like my third or fourth one right now, but
Yeah,
this is like yeah, this is my third one right here.
yeah. All right. So there you go. There's that picture again. Where
Okay.
when did this
And
all get started?
okay. And at the age of 10, I had to leave home. Not because I wanted to, but for the next 29 years of my life, I lived in 4 large facilities.
Yeah. And Judy, I'm going to share this with you because I don't know, most of the people who are in your audience have their sons and daughters living at home, so they may not be as familiar with facilities as Ricky obviously is,
Mhm.
and of course I as in my early social work career worked with both state what used to be called state schools and then also group homes. But the state of Texas has 13 large facilities throughout the state of Texas that's serving 3,000 individuals. And I'm not sure if y'all have already covered that kind of information. But in addition to that, there was a legacy of large institutions throughout the state. And Ricky's going to talk about a few of those. In fact, that's primarily places that he lived over those 29 years. And the populations in those facilities, very much like nursing homes, would be anywhere from 60 to 200 people. So that kind of frames that institutional framework that we over the last 40 years that Ricky and I have um, lived through or survived, and but it also is something that is prominent in today's service delivery system. So, all right, Ricky.
Okay. And the one of the very first places was in Port Arthur, Texas, and I went to Bob Hope High School, and 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 at this school I lived in a dormitory with over probably I want to say probably a hundred so people, and and when it was time for us to take a shower, we would all take a shower like in this big old gym bathroom, and uh, I didn't have no privacy then, and when it was time for us to like go to breakfast or lunch or dinner, we would all go in the dining room, and then when it was time for us to grab our food, we would go up to the window and grab our tray, and we would all sit around at a table. And when it was time for me to, take my medication, what I would do, I would have to go down to the nurse's station, and we would, stand in line and get our medication. And the the only time that I got to, see my family would be around Christmas, Thanksgiving, and Easter, the the three main holidays. And but all the other times, I you know I lived there, and so that's the only time we all got to see our family and stuff.
Right. And in that environment, everything was pretty much decided for you. You
Yeah.
weren't taught how to make decisions.
hmm
Right. Okay. So, but
And
things
then
changed.
and then in 2007, that that that's what uh that's when I started, advocating for myself. Because in 2007, on February 8th of 2007, that's when my name came up on the waiting list, and that's when I got my HCS slot. And that's when myself and Norine, we were screaming. So what I had to do was, I I got my circle of support team together, and I let everybody know that that that's when uh, we all started getting everything together for me to do the stuff that I'm doing now. And I was the president of Texas Advocates, and what the Texas Advocates is ran by individuals like myself with disabilities, and it's up there in Austin, Texas, and uh, we're being supported by the Arc of Texas, because that's where their main office is, up there in Austin. And this day, it it was very cold that day, and I was giving our annual speech to over uh, 100 so individuals out there in the audience. And the you see at the bottom picture, that's where everybody were holding up signs, and those signs were, it was letting um representatives know how many people are in their district, uh are on the waiting list, and that's how many people that they have. And then, after we did that, we went to their offices, and we talked to them, and told them what was important, to us, and what we were there to advocate about.
Right. Yeah. And the sign in the background, remember this is 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So language has changed since
Yes.
then, but nonetheless, the part that you can't see, which is actually more important, says a Texas tragedy. And back in the background, there is 20,000 individuals on the waiting list in 2007. Today, the waiting list is well over 100,000. And in that 100,000, about 40,000 or so are individuals with intellectual developmental disabilities who are on the official Medicaid waiver waiting list. So while at the time that this happened, this was actually when the Texas Home Living Medicaid waiver was created, which is a kind of we refer to it as waiver light, because
Mm-hmm.
it had a cap on the amount and stuff. So there was a lot of action taken at that time. But that was also shortly after that, there was another financial issue that caused a lot of we went for several legislative sessions with no increases in the Medicaid waiver whatsoever. So there, and Ricky, you were right. There are about 200 people in attendance, and these were people who were advocates from across the state of Texas. And each one of those signs showed the legislator how many people were on the waiting list. And if you want to obtain that, Judy, that the ARC of Texas actually still maintains that list. Okay, let's see if I can get it to go to the next slide. Here we go. So let's talk about your principles of self-determination. How'd you get out of this mess?
and the first principle that I'm going to talk about is freedom, and what does freedom mean to me? And freedom means that I have I have the freedom to go where I want to go and be who with I want to be with. And Miss Judy, if you don't mind, if you could, I just want to ask one or two people, what does freedom mean to them, and if
that'll
they
be
want
great.
to.
So everyone, if you could write in the chat box, what does freedom mean to you? And then I can go ahead, if you'd like, Ricky, and read the responses.
Yes, please.
And if you don't want to share what it means publicly, please email it to me or text it to me privately.
Yeah.
So what does freedom mean to you? To be myself, great answer. Schedule my time. Doing what I want when I want, another great answer.
Good.
Go and do whatever you want. The ability to do what I want, for myself. Be yourself and not be judged or criticized. That's really important too.
That's good too. Okay.
To go places independently. And just a couple more, Ricky. Freedom from financial burdens. And to do what I want as long as it does not hurt others without harassment. Great answers. Thank you, everyone.
Oh, those are, yay.
Yay.
I love your audience.
Yeah, I do too. Freedom from not feeling, eat a box of donuts and Netflix with no judgment. I love that. And then freedom not feeling like to be tied down by anything, which really important. Yeah, accepted for who I am and not to be judged. Really important. You all had really great answers. Thank you for participating in that.
And all those that responded, thank you very much, because that's what freedom really means. And to go where you want to be, go where you want to go, and be with the people you want to be with, and go in places where and where you want to live, and those are all true. And
so
also,
what does freedom mean to you, Ricky?
What does freedom mean to me?
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, freedom means to me is having people touch my body when I want them to, because when I was talking earlier, when I lived in those facilities, they were hired by the company. They weren't hired by me, and so I'm fortunate enough to say who I want to touch my body and when I want them to, having my own van where I can go to work and be with my family and friends and hang out with them.
Yeah. So Ricky, one of the things to point out is that date on February the 8th, 2007, when you were offered the HCS Medicaid waiver, you had been on the waiting list for quite some time.
Yes.
You were living in an ICF, which is an intermediate care facility, which is basically an institutional setting. By then you had moved to a small group home. But Ricky uses what's called under the HCS waiver, that, and all the waivers have this, it's called Consumer Directed Services. Um, the and under Consumer Directed Services, that using that mechanism, you know, like you said, allows you to hire the people who touch your body, because you are in charge of hiring. You are the employer, right?
Yes.
But also, in order to make Consumer Directed Services work for Ricky, he actually had to have control over his own transportation. As you can see, he uses a motorized chair, so he has to have a van with a lift. And but that van is your mobility. That between your motorized chair and the van, that's your mobility, and gives you that freedom to be able to go to work is the primary reason, because we actually use vocational rehabilitation money to help with the lift, but also to go and see family and friends and hanging out. So other cool stuff.
And freedom also gives me the opportunity to go to a game, because when I was in a group home, yes we could go watch a game, but we would have to leave in the middle of the game, so I so I can get back, so the staff can do a shift change. But actually, actually, now that I'm on my own, I was able to uh, go to a game, and watch the Houston Astros, and there's myself, and that's Norine's brother Ed, and right there in the middle, that's one of my staff. Uh, his name is Mr. Ronald Collins. He works with me on the weekend, and he went to a game with me, and also Norine went to a game, this game with me too, and we were able to see the Houston Astros. They were down, what, 5-0, and in the 8th and 9th inning, that's when Altuve hit the home run, and I was able to watch it because I was able to stay there for the whole game and watch it, and that was very cool to see.
And a special thank you to Family,
Yes.
because we were using the seats that y'all are able to obtain. So thank you, Judy.
Yeah, thanks. And then here at the top it says my emancipation. My 40th birthday. That's when I I I had a birthday party that my uh, friends and coworker put on for me, and instead of them giving me presents, everybody gave me money so I can put a down payment on my van, and so because the van includes the easy lock where I could roll in the van, roll up the ramp, roll in the van, and slide into that easy lock, and that's very expensive. So they gave me a surprise birthday party to help me put the down payment on the van.
And as I mentioned before, the van is really important in Ricky's work. You had already started working. In fact, you had your own business before
Yes.
you left the group home.
Mm-hmm.
What you didn't have control over was your transportation, which was significant because of the kind of work you do, which is basically training. But you were already beginning to do training like you did, at the Capitol, and presentations and things like that before you left the ICF
Right.
facility. They didn't necessarily like it, but
You know.
it but it and y'all spent a lot of time earlier with Michelle talking about eligibility for Medicaid. One of the things that Michelle and I, and my staff, some of the other staff at Imagine specialize in is how can a person who is already obtaining Medicaid or Medicare, it doesn't matter which of the benefits that you're on, how can you retain your services once you start working? Um, and so one of the things that we did while you were living in the group home, because they did not want you to earn money because they thought you were going to lose
Right.
your SSI and your Medicaid. So if anybody has that fear, what I want you to do is I want you to write that in the chat box. We're going to ask Judy to tell us what that looks like. But if you fear the loss of Medicaid eligibility or Medicare eligibility, write that in the chat box because we want to know about that. But we're going to tell you this story because Ricky lived in an ICFMR group home.
Mm-hmm.
In order for him to have a firewall between his earnings and his eligibility for that group home, otherwise they weren't going to let him do his job.
Sure.
We created it as his own business.
And Norine, excuse me for interrupting. For those of you who may not know, ICF stands for Intermediate Care Facility.
Yeah.
We use a lot of acronyms in our business, and I know sometimes those definitions can be confusing. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Judy. Yes. I'll try to remember to say it out in the future. So there are ways to do that, and what's again, Michelle did a fabulous job of saying get the help you need whenever you're venturing into employment or and doing the things you need to do. Ricky was actually living still in when he started his job, so we created his own business. Ricky, you were so young that I noticed there's no gray hair on this picture. That was over 10 years ago. So, yeah. But that was your first venture into the employment world and to getting your own van, and we were able to maintain his eligibility not only for the group home he was living at, but then once he achieved his getting on the home and community-based waiver, that February 8th, 2007. Then we were able to maintain his eligibility at that time as well. So that was, and we have done that through the years, and your benefits have changed significantly.
Yes.
So the other thing to think about is that when you venture into this world of work, things will change and your benefits will change, but you can always keep moving forward. There's an answer to almost any of the issues that come up. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about support and what kind of support you need. And again, it's freedom, support, confirmation, responsibility, and authority, or kind of the 5 principles. So this is the principle of support. I'll read this out if you want me to. And that support, if the definition is the people, the places, and the things. Like y'all were, one of the members or people in the audience talked about their assistive technology. That would be a part of support that provides assistance to allow us to function or act. And it also includes our financial support. Where are we receiving our funding? And self-determination and self-advocates should know the supports they need to be successful. So that was an important part of you figuring it out as well as us figuring it out, right, Ricky?
Yes.
So what kind of support?
And here's my circle support team, and people have been in my circle for a long time, and they have been people have left and come back, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to name off of a couple people that's in my circle, and the first person I'm going to talk about is gonna be Robert. And what Robert does for me, he comes and help me gets up, and he also helped me get dressed, and he also takes me on my doctor's appointment, and he also helps me with my grocery shopping. And I like I said, I have two well, I have two employees, and 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 it's Robert. Robert works with me Monday through Friday, and then I have Mr. Ronald Collins. He works with me on Saturday and Sunday. So that's my two employees, and and then and then I also have my supportive employment person. Her name is Ashley, and what Ashley does helps me with, she helps me with my employment, with my work.
I'm going to share another little interesting fact about Robert as your direct support staff person.
Uh-huh.
Robert's previous job before he started working with Ricky was as a courier. So
True.
he knows the state, he knows all of our region really well because he was a courier. He delivered packages.
Hmm.
And we met him through a network similar to Family. We met him through a local organization network. And so one of Ricky's requirements for his staff person is a person who likes to drive and to travel. And
Right.
so, so and was a good person, was a person that you could trust. And so what was amazing about that was that Robert was the perfect match for
Mhm.
Ricky's job, because Ricky not only travels throughout the state, he's traveled nationally. And so Robert goes with Ricky everywhere and helps provide the really good support that Ricky needs so that he's ready
Mhm.
when he needs to do his work. So we all appreciate Robert and his incredible talents,
Yeah.
especially all the driving he does. I don't know what your mileage is on your van right now, but I know it's a lot.
Right. Right.
All right.
And
Other people in your circle.
and then I have, I have my Aunt Brand. Um, um, she, we all know when family members they cook, and especially the next day to have the seasonings being it's real good. And she's come over, and she spent time with me, and I like to spend time with her just like she likes to spend time with me. And so that's real good to have also.
Right. And so that and when you were in facilities
Hmm.
like the group home or other facilities, this was a scene that you would never see. But this
Right.
is actually your apartment
Right.
and your auntie staying and cooking. And
Yeah.
then you've actually had family members who have spent the night with you from time to time. So that's very, very different feeling and looking.
Hmm.
Uh-oh. You can go through this really quickly.
Okay. And then imagine. And here are some of the some of the services that Imagine helps me with. They help me with my training, and then we also do person centered planning. And then we also Imagine also does uh, help me with my Social Security, and then they also help me with consumer directed services. And that's what I have. I have the consumer directed services where I can hire myself. And Imagine helps me with with all the paperwork. and and when it's time for my staff to do their timesheets or whatever. I I I go over with with my staff their time and make sure everything is correct. And then after I do that, I sign it, and I send it off, because I have a budget. uh you know and 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 Imagine helps me keep up with the budget, and I pay my staff out out of my budget.
Cool. All right. The next topic is responsibility. Woo, and that's a biggie. It's you have a lot.
Yeah.
It's an activity or task that one is required to do as part of a job or their role or legal obligations. And so we spent a lot of time talking to self-advocates about responsibility. And so what you decided to do, Ricky, was break the word down, and you
Hmm.
started off with the word personal,
Yeah.
that
And
you own it. Yeah.
yeah, and you know that you own it, and 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 when I say own it, as a person with a disability or your son and daughter, they own it, and that's the biggest key. You have to own it, and
Right.
really mean it.
And then broke down the word responsibility into both response, which is one word, and then ability,
Hmm.
which is something to focus on, the ability of a person to respond to what happens in their life.
And then you know to 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 respond to what happens to your son or daughter, or like myself, for instance. I have to you know really want it, and which I really do. I've been very fortunate to I've been on my I've been living here in this apartment for what, going on 9 years this June. So I really love having you know being on my own and having the freedom. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So you take, though, because you do like that, you take the responsibility to make sure certain things happen, right?
Right. And then you know because honestly, when I first told my when I first told my circle support team, to give me a chance, they were saying, what if something happens? Okay, what if something happens? And one of them, they said, what if the apartment catches on fire? I said, okay, what I'll do is, I'll make sure that I call 911. But before before my staff leave me at night, what uh, what they do is they make sure that I have my cell phone right there in the bed. So in case I need them or whatever, I can call them. And also, um, for the Texas City Fire Department, what I did before I moved in this apartment, I went down to the police station, and I I told them who I was, and they said, okay, what you need to do, you need to fill out this paperwork. And so what I did was I had help filling out the paperwork, because my handwriting is not the perfect. But so if there's something that really happens, the fire department or the police department or the ambulance department, they know that if they need to come in, they can come in. But I also have my staff. They don't stay that far from me. They stay right down the road. So if I need them, I can call them and they can come in just like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. It's good.
And then what I do is I get uh, I use I use my resources wisely, and and what
Yeah,
I mean by, go ahead.
yeah, you get a paycheck, right, Ricky?
Yes, I
Yeah.
do.
So pretty big pay. In fact, you don't get an SSI check anymore,
No,
right?
no.
So, okay. So how do you use that paycheck? How do you use your money?
I, how how I use my money is, I pay my bills, but before I do anything crazy, I make sure I pay my rent on time. I I pay my cable bill, and and I also pay my insurance, and I also pay my cable bill. And then after I do that, I buy my groceries, or whatever I need. And then after I do all that, I you know I go buy what I want, but I make sure I take care of all the stuff I need to take care of.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you see me laughing.
Yeah.
That was these were, as all of us. I mean, these are learned lessons, and
Mhm.
this was a tough one, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a tough one.
Well, yeah, but boy, it's come out in the end to be really helpful in terms of learning this particular piece and
Yeah.
personal responsibility. And you've already talked about rent and bills and earning money.
Hmm.
This is important though, your schedule.
And then what my schedule is, I have to make sure that I let myself know what's coming up, so they can make sure I'm there on time, or whatever I need, because I have to go through my schedule, every day, because my schedule my schedule doesn't stay the same all the time. So I have to make sure that I have everything on the schedule, so I can let my staff know where I need to be, when I need to be there.
Right. And I'll take this as an opportunity to brag about you a little bit. The calendar here is 2018, so we probably should update it. But
Yeah.
the Ricky is approved as an instructor by Vocational Rehabilitation Services for what's called pre-employment transition services. He is one of our lead instructors on self-advocacy. We'll talk about that a little bit in my presentation. But you impact the lives and work with close to 60 students every semester, like every fall and then every spring. So
Mhm.
there's the classes that we have set up. And so we are just like Family to Family sets up this class, we set up those classes, and Ricky
Right.
is an instructor and pretty much working, every day on another
Mhm.
class. I think the only day that you don't have a class is maybe Thursday,
Right.
but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah. Oh, here it is, doing real work.
And real work. Uh, when I was living in a group home, what I would have to do is I would have to go to you know a workshop, uh, and I would have to I would have to be there, Monday through Friday. Excuse me, Monday through Friday. And what I did there was I would put nuts and bolts on a pole. I would put 25 on a pole, and then after I would do that, I would do 25 more. And then for every 2 weeks, I would get paid $1.50 for every 2 weeks. And then but and then I would do other stuff for them. But now I'm very fortunate to work for a company that I love to work for, and I get paid very nice.
Yeah. So, and I think that an important concept that is in this particular thing that fit for you is putting nuts on a pole, and it's contract work at a
Mhm.
sheltered workshop. It wasn't a very good job match. The term job match, the job matching the skills and talents and capacities of the individual was was a big hiccup. It was a big missed step. That was not something you were actually that good at. It
Right.
wasn't that great of a job to begin with,
Mm-mm.
but it wasn't necessarily one that matched your skills and abilities. And your talent really is your ability to communicate with others.
Mhm.
And so the picture on the left, you're actually getting ready for um, a state, one of the state organizations, or I'm sorry, state committee meetings that you were
Yeah.
sitting on, a state with HHS, and the picture on the right is one of the classes that you had
Yeah.
taught.
Hmm.
So yeah, that concept of a job match and being able to do real work because you actually had a job that matched your skills.
Hmm.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about authority now. That's the next principle. And it's the power or right to make decisions that are respected and followed.
Mhm.
And this was a big change in your life because in the previous places where you lived, you really had very little authority over what was going to happen to you.
Mhm. And um, like I said, in all those facilities that I lived in, the they were controlled by the staff and the company that I was with, and so and they were saying to me, you know they 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 have they set our schedule for us, and telling us what time we had to get up, take a shower, and all that. But now I have the control over, saying when when I want to take a shower, if I want to take a shower that morning, or take a shower that night. And I have the control to say, I don't feel well today, but if if I felt sick at the group home, they you know they would have to find somebody to stay, because they would have to leave. But now I have the opportunity to just say, I can I can call and say I don't feel well today, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to work a half a day, or I'm gonna work all day today.
Yeah.
And and then and uh and then I can decide when I want to do uh my exercise. Um, my OT lady, her name is Martha, but we joke around with each other, and I call her my torture lady, because what she does, she stretches me, and make sure that I stay limber and all of that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I thought you used to tell me that when you were at the group home, that
Mhm.
because of the shift changes, unless you were on your deathbed, you
Yeah,
actually had to go to the workshop.
yeah,
So,
that is true.
yeah, because they don't staff, most group homes do not staff during the day. And that includes not just the intermediate care facilities, but it also includes the home and community services or the Medicaid waiver group home.
Yeah,
So, but there are some group homes that are fabulous and do an amazing job. So ask the right questions.
right. And then I always say this in my presentations: nothing about me without me. If I'm not in the room and I don't give you permission, no, you may not talk about me. But if if I give you permission, yes, you may talk about me. But if I don't, you may not do
Yeah. So an
that.
example of that, Ricky, would be is as if I need to, if there's an issue going on with your Medicaid waiver, and we're updating your records so
Right,
that you can have the Medicaid buy-in,
right,
we might actually, Ricky makes sure that he's completed the correct permissions
yeah,
that allows us to have direct conversations with either, whether it's the Social Security office or the HHSC office,
true.
so that we can process the what we need to process in order for you to remain Medicaid eligible for your Medicaid waiver.
Hmm.
So but otherwise, yeah, the worst thing I see, and Ricky and I have had these conversations, especially when we were doing classes person to person,
Yeah,
um, about people having conversations about a student or about another person that in front of other people
yeah,
that wasn't always positive.
right,
And it wasn't necessarily just professionals doing it. Other family members would sometimes engage in
true.
conversations that were not always really positive. They could
Yeah,
be, in fact, hurtful. And so when you are an adult and you're a self advocate, this applies to everyone,
yeah,
including family.
Mhm.
And so it's just that awareness of that you're an adult and you're not a thing. And
Right.
so this one's hugely important.
Mhm.
The last of the principles of self-determination that you talk about is called confirmation,
Confirmation.
right? Yeah.
And
And
and for confirmation that this is one of the, well, they're all important, but this is the one that really sticks out to me. I would say is because as Noreen said earlier, that I would sit on I would sit on I would sit on these committees because they needed somebody to uh, a person with a disability to sit on this committee and stuff. And there will be times that I thought that um I wasn't being respected, and I was not being listening to. But and that's very hard for some people, individuals that have disabilities. But for me, you know I I finally grabbed onto it and said, okay, I am being listened to, because like Miss Judy said earlier, I do have an bill in my name, and myself and Noreen, and we've for this to happen, we had to do a lot of leg work, and for this to happen, so it's very cool to have a bill in your name and stuff like
yeah. So here are some visits that you've made with legislators, as well as bringing your own the local self-advocate group, the Gulf Coast Self-Advocates,
that.
to visit their local legislator, and
Yeah,
that's an important part of your past,
yeah,
that you've
and
created.
and I always say, I in each of my classes, we even have this in the class. I have a voice to make a choice about my future.
Future. That's a part of your self-advocacy chant.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So
Uh,
cool. So how do we
well,
do, Judy, on
Oh,
time?
well, we're over on time, but it was so important and I did not want to interrupt you, so it's all good.
okay,
Believe me.
okay,
Um, Ricky, and everyone, there's Ricky's information. And again, I'll be sending you how to reach him should you want to. And Noreen, if you want to stop sharing your screen, because I really have a great story that I want to share with you. And Ricky started to say it, but then switched gears. And this really touched me in so many ways. I will never forget this story, Ricky. He had lived in the facilities, as you know, for decades, never given a choice as to what he wanted to eat, when he wanted to take a shower, when he wanted to get up. Everything was decided for him. I couldn't imagine that. And Ricky shared the story where when he was initially in his own place, and his staff person said, Ricky, how would you like your eggs?
mm-hmm.
And you were like, oh my gosh, somebody is asking me, do I want them scrambled? Do I want them fried? Do I want them hard boiled? That was like a pivotal moment for you,
Mm-hmm.
that somebody was asking you that. And those are things that many of us take for granted. And it was like you could have a beer in your
Yeah,
apartment,
yeah.
but when you were in those facilities, no, you could never have a beer,
Mm-hmm.
really. So your story is personally and professionally important to me in so many ways. And I'm so grateful that you shared it. And Noreen, being Ricky's assistant, you're the Vanna White of Ricky Broussard. And we've gotten some great feedback. Everyone just is so, oh, one person wrote they're crying. And it's really just amazing how all that has happened for you and how great that is. Questions for Ricky. We've got a couple of minutes and then we need to get into Norine because she needs about at least an hour, and then we'll be concluding about 12:30. Any questions for Ricky? Leonella, why don't you unmute yourself and you can ask a question.
Mine's not so much of a question, but I'm just so glad to hear. I mean, this is so inspiring for me just to hear you speak, because I think it's a great and amazing thing to hear, not only for adults, for our children, because believe it or not, I feel, and we actually had this talk on my son's IEP meeting, that schools are falling within that category. My son doesn't verbally speak, but one of the biggest things we brought up was that I told them, where does his voice count? Why doesn't he get to pick? Because we had an incident and I was like, my son has every right to decide who touches his body. And I was like, you as a teacher do not have a say just because he's not able to be verbal. I'm like, we're advocating for these kids, but yet we we don't let them choose or say what they want. So I am so, to hear you speak today was so inspirational for me as a parent, for my son. It gives me such hope. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. And you know, even though you say your son doesn't speak, but even though you say he doesn't speak, he is speaking, and
Yep.
and the way he's speaking to you and the teachers may be by his face expression or a smile or whatever, but you know he is communicating to you and his teachers or whatever.
Absolutely. And there is so much technology that is available. And there's a great website called Texas Project First. Texas and the word first are written out. It's texasprojectfirst.org. And if you Google it and in the search bar put adaptive technology, school districts, after an evaluation, need to provide that technology, train your son on that technology, the teachers and parents. So whenever, we think our children can't verbally speak, that doesn't mean they can't communicate, because their facial expressions, their behavior communicate very well if they are happy or not happy.
True.
So it's really, really important to get that technology in place. 50 years ago, we didn't have the technology, but by golly, we sure do today.
Yeah.
My son has a device to speak, but I think that's
Yeah.
one of the biggest things we remind adults is, what's the point of him having this technology if you're directing me as a parent when he's clearly here next to us?
Mhm. Yep. Thank you, Leonella.
Thank you.
Another question, Ricky and Norine, who helps you find attendance? Is it hard to find ones who will accept Medicaid pay?
Well, Noreen, can you answer that one?
Sure. One of the things that we were fortunate to do under using consumer directed services, and Judy, I think you use CDS also.
I do.
Consumer directed services in general pays better to the direct support staff than the regular Medicaid waivers that you get through the provider. And that's because they don't have to deal with the person who takes on the administrative burden is the employer. Ricky is the employer of record for his Medicaid waiver. He doesn't get paid to be the employer. I'm the employer of record for my brother, Ed, who uses a Medicaid waiver. And so I don't get paid. And likewise, Judy is the employer of record for her Medicaid waiver. So she doesn't get paid either. So that amount of money that would have gone to a provider or whatever has been retained in the rate. They get paid somewhat better. It all depends on the waiver. but they get paid somewhat better than they would if they were working for a provider.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of easy. It's easier to attract the care that you need for that reason. Ricky, when you talked about Robert actually is employed a full 40-hour week, and so he gets paid a good salary or a good wages. It's hourly, but it's good wages.
Right.
And likewise, Ronald gets a good weekend job. He's a paraprofessional in a school district during the week. And then he works on weekends. And so with Ricky, we met these people through our trusted friends
And
in our
Norine,
network.
they were asking how you find these attendants. With Robert, you found kind of by chance because he was the courier.
Yeah, it was trusted friends. And then go ahead, Ricky, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, through Robert, because I used to work at in Alvin in office with the Arca Gulf Coast, and Robert's mom, she worked down the hall from us for a lawyer's office, and she found out that I needed somebody to travel with me, and so she let Robert know, and what I had to do, I had to interview Robert, for the job or whatever. So that's how that happened. And for Ron used to work for a company that I did some contract work for, and that's how I found those two gentlemen.
Okay.
Yeah, our most reliable attendants are ones that come through our networks. But we also have used others resources like caretaker.com, Sitter City, those kinds of, but those are a little bit more difficult and you have to be more careful.
Yeah. And we've got 3 more questions, but Norine, I do want to get to you. So real quickly, Ricky, someone had asked, do you have Alexa?
Yes,
and
yes, I do have Alexa.
You do, because, that would be really important. People were concerned that, God forbid, there was an emergency, that you getting the necessary help that you need.
Yeah.
Immediately.
I have Alexa, and then I also use Siri on my cell phone.
Wonderful. Okay. And then, and I know that there was, finding reliable and good attendance and staff that you can trust is huge.
Right.
We all have that problem. We all do. What I'm going to do is I'd like Norine to get started. Somebody had asked one other question. Oh, as far as getting vocational services that are approved by TWC, is there a list? I think that Norine might be able to answer some of that in her presentation. And if not, we can talk about that after she gets started. So Norine, why don't you go back and share your screen again? And I do want to get to everyone's questions, but I definitely want Norine to have the chance to present as well.
And Judy, give me the time frame again.
It's 11:22, so we need to wrap up about 7:30, including questions and answers. Some of the stuff we've already kind of discussed, talked about a little bit because it was weaved into Ricky's presentation, which is great. Talking about, having your voice and your interests. And I think it's important what you discuss. Some of it you may have to go over a little bit more quickly, but we can still get through it, I believe.
Oops, I'm sorry.
No worries.
Am I presenting now?
Yep, now you are. And to the group, you have asked about slides. We will be sending them. It's going to take multiple emails because there are so many slides. So I will send that information to you by Monday, Tuesday at the latest. So just so you know.
Awesome. All right. So, and Judy, just off, I did send you a copy of also our transition video, which we're not going to show today, but it's the story of 3 young young adults who have left school services, but with support from the school district, the vocational rehabilitation, and Imagine was there as well. They are successfully employed, and so they're their stories. And that video was actually taken during the months of January and February of this year. So it's in our present time in COVID. And so I want to just start this presentation by saying that we've been talking about this for a lot of years, right, Judy?
Mm-hmm.
And but nothing has challenged us quite as much. You know, you've got the challenges that are there already, and now we have the challenge of COVID laying over it. And so that particular video, if you feel free to share that with everybody in the group, because I think it gives us hope beyond this period of time that we're going through right now with the pandemic and everything. So I want to talk about a little bit about getting that job that is meaningful to you as a person. And it's very much like Ricky was explaining, you know, you have to have that right kind of job match. And this, I've used this picture in the past, but I don't, but this is even more so now. It's like everything is virtual, but you're, in some cases, I've heard this so many times, is that we seem to be even more busy now than we were previously. It's getting, and that we have all of these goals and ideas and deadlines, but then on top of it, we have the COVID-19. So we're doing so much stuff electronically, and we've lost a lot of the human touch that allowed us to do the things that we were able to actually do when we created Ricky's Circle of Support. And so people are struggling. People are really, really struggling with things. But I think that what, as Ricky's presentation does, and as I hope to end up with today, is just to give everyone a message of hope, that there is a way to get through many of the barriers that we see, and that we can continue on, and there is a future. As a parent, you got, and I know that there might be some self-advocates in the group as well, so we got a slide for you coming up. But most parents are worried about the success of any of their children. And it doesn't matter if that child has a disability or not. We want all of our youth or our children to succeed in life. So what is that going to look like? And how do we get there? And how do we define success? And who defines success for us? And how much of a voice does that self-advocate, does that young person with a disability have in defining that success? And I think looking at those ideas are very important. In the past year, when Ricky and I have, worked, well, the past 2.5 years now, we've been doing pre-employment transition services in the school districts. But as we've worked with a lot of self-advocate groups, and as he shared his story as a peer mentor, you know, these are the kinds of things that self-advocates are worried about, that they're not good enough for anything, or for a lot of things, including the workplace. They lose control, and the anger that comes out. Or, you know, the world's not safe. They're scared to go outside the room. And unfortunately, the COVID issues have made this a lot worse in terms of how people just getting out and breaking through barriers that help them create relationships, whether or not they're liked, you know, keeping other people happy. You know, I do something because it makes someone else happy, as opposed to, is this meaningful to me? So there's a lot of conflicts, a lot of issues that young people are going through, but what we want to achieve is really quite different. And we want to achieve a picture of a person who says, I am valued. I am an important part of this world. I'm a good friend. I can have friends that I share issues with, that people like talking to me. I like myself. You know, that those are the things that we want to help people move towards and to achieve within their own life. And here's this one that I have a good sense of humor. I would say that out of the many individual groups that we've worked with, Ricky, and you can help me with this, but humor is huge. It's so important. And I don't want people to lose their sense of humor, that we need to have the ability to laugh and to share. Go ahead,
it's
Ricky.
very huge, yeah.
Major.
Right.
Because if we don't, we're not going to survive this. I mean, we need to make fun of things that are happening, of ourselves, and because otherwise we're digging a hole. So how do we get through it? How do we break through all the stuff that's been laid on top of us? I think the story earlier of the IEP and a person, the child that doesn't have able to verbalize, but then to how do we help have that person have their voice, and breaking through it, seeing beyond the smoke screens that get thrown up at us when we're in meetings like an IEP meeting where you have 8 other professionals and yourself and your son or daughter, that's a smoke screen. There's a lot of intimidation going on. So how do we get through it? And the principles of self-determination speak to us every time we get ready for creating or moving forward, and especially as we're moving out of the school system into adult services and thinking about employment and where we live and how we get places. All of that to say is that our future is really embedded in our own personal belief systems, and the belief systems that that the self-advocate takes with them into their next step. Ricky and I have worked a whole lot over the last, I guess, what is it, 11 years now, Ricky, with Imagine?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of thinking through what is it that we believe, and are we making decisions that are congruent with our belief system? When we make decisions that are that we say we have a goal, that this is what we want to achieve, this is where we want to go, and then we make a decision that is in opposition to that's when things get a little bit messy, and it's like, oops, nope. Not that that's not going to happen, but it's like you go back and grab it and go, wait, but our belief system is where we start. What is it that we want? And that's why that answer to the question of what is freedom to you is so incredibly important, because that's going to be your guiding light, right, Rick?
Yes.
Yeah. So are we there yet? The part that a good friend of mine and a good friend of Ricky's as well, that we talked about a whole lot is when you don't have a belief system, or you're unaware of what your values are, that you haven't done your own homework in terms of your own internalized beliefs and values and how you use them. And that's why these trainings from family to family are so very important, because I think the entire foundation of what our next step is, what our actions are based on what are our beliefs and our values, and if we can start there, then we can move forward. If we don't have that, this is what happens. We have limited beliefs. We have a whole lot of things that say we can't. Well, we have plenty of other people who will tell us that. We don't need to tell us that ourselves. We need to be saying I can, because if you have limited beliefs, if you start there yourself, then you get angry at every time that comes true, right? You get, for lack of a better way to say, you just get pissed off. It's sort of like, why doesn't anything work? Then we end up hurting ourselves or hurting others because we can't think that outside of that, encroachment upon our belief system. And then we start making decisions based out of fear, and out of, when I have sat in on the huge number, and not so much IEPs. I'm more in the adult services world because I'm in employment. So I've sat in on a lot of employment meetings, and Ricky, we're going to share a couple about your stories about you later, and a couple of those employment meetings. But these are, hopefully we've moved the system beyond that. But I've also sat in on a lot of those annual staffings that happen for people who are in the Medicaid system, long-term services system. And there are a lot of people who talk about what a person can't do, as opposed to what they can and should be and are willing to put the effort in if they have the right supports. So and people function in fear. And remember earlier I asked you that if you had the fear that if you go to work and start earning money, you will lose your Medicaid. That's one of the things that stops people more than anything. And I understand that, because I deal with it all the time. big portion of Imagine staff have those tools, so that once you are on Medicaid, we can almost always ensure that you'll have a road and access into getting Medicaid in Texas. We don't know about the other states of the union, but in Texas, that knowing how to access Medicaid so you can retain your long-term services is huge. And that's what we do with you, Ricky, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because Ricky's actually not on SSI and Medicaid, he's on Medicaid buy-in. What I want to start with, though, is are we doing the right thing for youth in schools? Are we actually doing the inclusion that was promised through IDEA? That we are giving people the experiences that they need through our community-based instruction, so that then as they progress out of school into the adult services world, that they have the exposure that they need. Someone mentioned the 18 plus program. That's at 18 to 22. Of course, during that period of time, the person could leave school at any point. But the issue there is that if you have a school district and all of their, or if you're talking in the IEP, but all of that student's experiences are only in the classroom, then you are missing the biggest piece that your school district could be giving to you at that moment, which is community-based instruction. Basically, the data tells us that students who have community-based instruction, work experience, or volunteer work or whatever while they're in school, but it's in the community and not in the classroom, not in a life skills class, that that they have a much higher likelihood of being able to be successfully employed once they leave school services. So that's a significant piece of what happens in schools. The other part is exposure to students who don't have disabilities in the typical settings or in the school setting. The reason why that's so important to me, and I'll use my brother Ed as an example. Edward he spent his last years of school actually in the school district of Stockville, Texas. And he was one of the few students with an intellectual disability in Stockville, Texas. So his exposure to everything was quite open. He wasn't isolated. He wasn't only with other students with disabilities. The reason why that's important is that once you leave school, the people who are your coworkers, the people who are your supervisors, or the people who even own a business that you might be working in are going to be those peers, those at school. And so that piece of inclusion is huge. And I think that we miss it if we don't have students experiencing and creating and forming relationships with students, other students who without disabilities at the school level. So what I hope for by today, and I know I have limited time, but what I want us to break out of is the same old thinking, because that always gives us the same old results. And so we want to think differently about our future and the futures of our sons and daughters. Ricky had talked a little bit about his job, which is under pre-employment transition services. For Ricky, it is and for myself, as well as several of our staff, it is a contract that we have with Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation Services. And the reason why I included this slide, and this is unusual, Judy, I don't think I've ever done this before, is because when you are when you are supporting your son or your daughter in an IEP meeting, and your son or daughter is over the age of 14, if they have not already received classes from VR, VR can now start providing these services at the age of 14, which are basically training in the areas of self-advocacy, work readiness, career exploration, post-secondary education, and workplace training. There's 5 different areas that they can provide training to while they are in school. And so if you haven't had access to this in your school district at this point, then you should be asking for that in the IEP meeting, and asking for these services from vocational rehabilitation. They can do it virtually, they can do it face to face, and they tap into a provider system. Ricky, here I added your chant.
Right, I see. It's cool.
Right. And so Ricky leads a chant at the end of his trainings, and it's, I have a voice to make a choice
about my
future. Right. And so that's a huge piece of what we want our students to end their trainings with when we're working with them. But that, to us, this is actually a part of federal legislation called the Work Incentive Opportunity Act. And it's been with us now for about 5 or 6 years. It is relatively new, but it is one of the first attempts that I've seen vocational rehabilitation to do something different.
Right.
And that something different is to start with students when they're younger.
Norine,
there's a lot of, yes, ma'am.
If I could just interject something, and please forgive me. So I'm getting some private messages, and I love your presentation as always. So when Norine says, you know, in the IEP meetings, so, and Stephen, thank you for posting the TexasProjectFirst.org link.
Oh,
So
good.
it goes by age. So, you know, you would hope that, you know, everyone's going to be on the same team and going to say, hey, we have these amazing services called pre-employment transition services. But not everybody is on the same team.
Right.
And it isn't always brought up. So you do have to ask, and it's really important that you know what your rights are. So, you know, fortunately, my son did the community-based instruction, which was wonderful, huge to be in the community, huge. And if I could also add, even doing certain jobs within the school are really great. Office worker, he volunteered in the kitchen during the times that weren't as busy. But as parents, and I realize that the self-advocates are already out of school on this call, but for those parents whose kids are still in school, these pre-employment transition services are really important. And they were not around 30 years ago, so let's take advantage of them today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Yes, like I said, the legislation was only written maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So, and Texas is still emerging in terms of figuring out how to provide these services. The other service that vocational rehabilitation has had since for decades, not that that makes any difference in terms of the quality, but is a service called supported employment. They have, so vocational rehabilitation does provide employment services for people with disabilities, and they can start providing that service, you know, earlier on than they currently do, or even more aggressively than they do. But what I want to share with you today is just that you get to have enough information that you're familiar with their lingo, so that when if you ever do work with vocational rehabilitation, which I hope you have the opportunity to, that you can that you know what this means. So this is one of my photos. Ricky, one of these days I want to replace this photo with one of you. And it's ready, willing, and able to work. And so I just love that picture, and it's from the ARC. But basically, so supported employment, the core definition is that individuals with the most significant disabilities are provided the support that they need to be successfully employed. When they talk about competitive employment and wage, and the term that vocational rehabilitation uses often is competitive integrated employment, that they are basically talking about a typical job in a typical workplace. We still have some issues around, and the other part of that is the wage. The wage needs to be minimum wage or better. And minimum wage right now is $7.25 an hour. So that example Ricky gave earlier of the you know, putting the weight, you know, things on the pole, the nuts on the pole, that would have not been considered either competitive because the wage was so low, nor was it integrated because it was in a sheltered environment. If you're working in a sheltered environment, that's not going to be included in the supported employment definition. That is something else that exists, but it is something different. The other part about supported employment is that the provider The Michelle, for instance, is a provider who gives supported employment services. There is a long-term ongoing contact with that person that provides the support that they need along the way. That what we do in the model that is different, and the reason why it was such a phenomenal change in terms of how we viewed people's value in the workplace, is that when we do a place and train, that means that we are looking at the person's gifts and talents. We're finding an employment site that matches those gifts and talents and abilities, and we're doing what's called a good job match. But we put that individual, because there's issues around how you train and where you train, by that individual being in that job site and being trained in that job site or in that job, very much like what Ricky was for his job, that they learn the culture, the expectations, and the way to do that job within that job site, so that they are more successful. For instance, if you're working in a cafeteria that you're doing a lot of cleaning and moving things along in the cleaning area, that if you train in the job site that you're training, then you're going to be more successful than if you trained for the job at school and that cafeteria, and then they just moved you into a new cafeteria, but you didn't get any training. That they say, oh, well, he worked here, so he'll be able to do it there. We'll just transfer those job skills. Well, sometimes that transfer of job skills isn't going to work because the place is different, the tools are different, the equipment's different. So the training in the job happens in that job site, and it can be repeated, but you still need supported employment to get that training in the job site. Okay, that's not just a job placement is a different thing. A job placement is assuming that you're going to be able to transfer those skills. Well, when we assume things, you all know what that means, right? It doesn't always work. So making sure that you have that training at that job site is huge, and that place and train. That piece of training is called systematic instruction, and it's very much a person like myself would look at, okay, Ricky, I need you to do these things in order for us to be successful with this class. And I would lay out what are the things that are important for Ricky to be able to communicate to other people with disabilities. And we would train to that message. Ricky would then take his message and be able to deliver it in a way that is meaningful to the students. And that's why, Ricky, you still have a supported employment coach, don't you?
Yes.
Right. And you have, and the person that supports him in creating his presentations, setting up his PowerPoints, she is paid for through supported employment that's in the Medicaid waiver. It's not vocational rehabilitation, it's actually the Medicaid waiver. So but that piece of instruction is a big piece of supported employment. The other part of it is fading to natural supports, and for people in a typical job, that there would be where the coach, the job coach or the job trainer would be able to fade off of a typical job site, like my cafeteria example, and they would, and then the coworkers, the other people in that area are the ones that take over that the support of the individual on the job. Now, to keep ongoing supports, the job coach or job trainer would then come back in and do check-ins with the employer, do additional training if it was necessary, or if there was a job change, would this person be able to do that? Do we continue to add that consultation role? The fade to natural support, long-term research that's been done out of, let's see, Michigan and Iowa, I believe, Wisconsin. I'm sorry, Michigan and Wisconsin, they've done long-term studies on the effectiveness of supported employment. What are the tools that work the best? What they have found is that when you have when a job trainer is really good and is able to get that fade into natural supports, and those coworkers are there kind of knowing things and clicking along if help is needed, that there is a much higher, like an 85% higher success rate when job skills trainers leave the work environment and natural supports take over. And the reason is that there's not that intrusion of another person coming into the workplace, that it's much more natural and it works. And then if there's an issue, you're a phone call away, we need help with this or whatever. And it works again for individuals with the most significant disabilities, and that significant disabilities includes behavioral support, as well as medical needs and other kinds of and intellectual support needs. So there's a wide variety of ways that can be utilized, support employment can be utilized. As I mentioned earlier, the pandemic has made huge changes in the workplace. If y'all, I encourage you guys that when Judy sends out the information to you guys next week, that the little video, it's called On the Tides of Change, are stories of 3 young adults who are now employed and working in their jobs. And in spite of one of them is working at Lowe's and today, and, well, all of them are in their jobs. So they talk about their work and what they're doing. I know it is a very scary thing for a lot of people, and there's a lot of different opinions about the pandemic, but I think we're all going to work through it, and we're all going to find ways for us to keep working, or to get people working in typical jobs. The other theory or movement that's out there that I want to point out to you guys is called Employment First. And that is, again, I mentioned that legislation was the Work Incentive Opportunity Act that resulted in those pre-employment transition services. Employment First is also kind of at the leading edge of that as well. And that what that legislation says is that when a person leaves a school district, as well as individuals who are currently in sheltered employment or rehabilitation services, should be given the opportunity for a job. And vocational rehabilitation is obligated to provide that opportunity. That employment opportunity must come first before going into a congregated, segregated setting. And the organization that is emerging in Texas that is promoting that Employment First and has working with state agencies to kind of get their act together and move this along is called APSE, Texas APSE, and that's for Association for Persons Supporting Employment First. So if y'all have questions about that, just let Judy know and I'll be able to hook you up. I would be remiss to give any kind of presentation about employment without mentioning my brother Ed. This is my brother Ed. He's actually doing his volunteer job here, working at the local park. He works with what gentleman called, his name is Rudy. He's the park supervisor, and Ed is loading up. Rudy did a lot of trimming in our trees, and Ed is loading up his Kubota tractor. Ed has his own business. He operates, it's called Create Ed, and he has products that he sells at market once a month. And then he also does a lot of other, he also does shredding is another part of his business. He has a lot of fun, but in his extra time, he does a lot of volunteer work. And so he's hooked up with lots of community organizations that he likes and that he enjoys working with. So let's see, Judy, I only have about 15, 20 minutes. Is that right?
Yeah, it's 11:50. Yeah, if you could go to about 12:15, if that works for you. And then okay. I want to leave about 10 minutes or so for questions, because what I've been hearing is people want to know kind of like how to get started on certain things. We know that if it's pre-ETS, that starts in the school, but if you're an adult, how do you just get started? And I think it's kind of individual for each person.
It is.
And it might be that that they need to reach out to you individually, because everyone has different disabilities, everyone has different challenges, everyone has different experiences. So we could take hours, and maybe they need to have a one-on-one with you. So thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm going to work through this. I'm going to skip this slide because I'm not sure then, Judy, since I've sent things so late, if you were able to get this, the worksheet out to folks.
So
on
what I
the-
did is I found that if I sent sometimes the slides before the presentation, people didn't show up to hear what you had to say. And we know how
okay.
important the message is that you have. So I will be sending out the slides on Monday.
Oh, okay. Well, with the slides, there's also a PDF worksheet that is called this. It's called the SWOT analysis. And the SWOT analysis, for any of you guys that have been in business and might be familiar with this, it is a very, very typical business activity that when you are looking forward to doing something, when you are saying, I want to get to this spot with myself, you know, if you're setting personal goals, or with my business, if you're setting up a goal for your business, the SWOT analysis has been around for decades. So I'm hoping that some of you are probably familiar with it. If you're not familiar with it, if you go and Google it, just put SWOT, you'll see you know, 100 different examples of how people have used this SWOT analysis. What my personal experience has been is that whenever I go look at some of the agency forms that are used for supporting a person to find a job, or what their educational goals, or whatever their living, you know, arrangements, whatever, they tend to get into these long, very thick, very cumbersome kind of assessments. And I'm like going, okay, yeah, so where are we going to end up with this? You know, what are we going to do? So I want to kind of give people a little bit of a shortcut. And I would tell you that as a employment specialist and as a person, you know, I now direct lots of other people who are providing services in a variety of different ways for individuals to find, get, and keep a job. That if a parent or a self-advocate walked into me with their SWOT analysis and said, this is what I can tell you from the get-go, in a very simple way, I would give them a hug. I would say, man, you're cool. And go, yeah, I wish everybody would give me this much information. This is awesome stuff. But it will seem simple, but you'll start to find that there are layers, and that you'll start to kind of grow and build with it. And but you know, where can we start and there's kind of different ways to think through it. One of those is I wanted you all to use this. I'm going to use this as a SWOT analysis for just how you think of yourself if you're a self-advocate, or your son or a daughter if they have a disability, to where they can start thinking about, man, will I ever get a job? And as an employment specialist and leading teams in the past, basically our only criteria for people is that they're able to breathe. Yeah. And that there is a job out there that they can do. Now, the other criteria is that they need to want to work.
And
So those
that's
two
the biggest
things.
key.
Go ahead, Ricky.
And like I said, that's the biggest key, is do they want to work? Because like you said, Norine, they can work.
Yeah. So, you know, Ricky and I are working with a young man right now that his only goal in life is that he wants to be like Ricky. He doesn't really want to work at it.
Right.
But he wants to be like Ricky.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a lot of skills and talents. And we're going like, well, come on, you need to kind of think through and we need to move through some growing experiences. So so we're going to start off with the SWOT, and we're going to talk, I'm going to work you through it. If you since you don't have the worksheet in front of you, if you have just a blank sheet of paper, and you know, chart off 4 different sections, you know, or just use a page for each one, because we're going to go through these as strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Judy asked me at one point to say, you know, how about challenges instead of weaknesses? And I said, well, then that would be Scott instead of SWOT.
You're right. You have a good memory.
So, but basically that's interpretive. What do I need to improve? So, so anyway, let's get started with that. And that's sort of like how your work sheet will look, the one that you'll get. Strengths are those things that internally you yourself or your son or your daughter, and again, the end goal here is I'm thinking about the self-advocate and their goal to get a job. Okay. If you were doing a SWOT analysis on the question that Judy asked earlier, how do we get into the system? That would look different than this. Okay. And maybe Judy, if that's something that you want me to do in the future, you'll let me know. Okay. But my SWOT analysis right now is how am I going to get my brother Ed into a job, right? So first I'm going to look at what are his strengths, what internally, what are the things that we know that he can do and that he does well. Here are some examples you may have of your own, of yourself or your own son or daughter. These are things that come straight out of some of the work we do with young people in our pre-ETS classes. They get their classes. They're, you know, we have some students that, you know, you sign on to your Zoom class at such and such a time. They're in a half hour ahead, 15 minutes ahead, 10 minutes ahead. There's some like always like that. On the weaknesses side, there would be our students that show up a half hour late, those kinds of things. So drawing, making things with their hands, the huge skill set there. May not look like work right now, but it gives us clues for the future. Working on, you know, making sure things are, they can't stop it until it's finished. You know, I know a guy that, you know, his shredding is, it's all about, man, I need to finish this box before I stop. And he's just determined. Following directions, or being able to do a task after it's modeled. The directions thing is different in terms of what's verbally delivered versus what's visualized and how a person learns. This is something that you know, again, using their hands, but liking to collect things, assembling things, or being very physical in nature, you know, being, you know, like to be up and moving and loves watching sports with people. Oops, sorry, let me go back one. I was moving my cursor too much. Cleaning your room up or cleaning the house, knowing how to do chores, knowing how to run equipment, knowing how to do the vacuum. The one thing that you know, and I'm going to use my brother Ed as an example because, you know, he's kind of like okay with it. If he was here with me now, he'd be wanting to be in the presentation. But Edward doesn't see dirt. He was brought up on a farm, so he on a dairy farm for part of his life, and so he sees dirt as kind of like being okay. so he would not be in this category, but there are other people who clearly are, and that this is important, and they could see it and they go for it, and it's clean. But also having an awareness of money. This is an area that is huge, and that when you are aware of money and what money can do, it is more likely to be a positive reinforcer than if we've not allowed people to have experiences with money. And so knowing how to use money, knowing what money can do for you and what it can bring. And I'm not sure if the thing down at the bottom, but this is the Zoom kind of link here, but it may be blocking it off. But also enjoying doing things like cooking or
Yes, we can see
sewing.
that. We can see it.
Okay. So thanks. So those are, you know, if you can do things like that and you know how to follow instructions, ingredients, and put those together, then those are all strengths. So my challenge to you right now, for yourself, if you're a self-advocate or if you're supporting your son or daughter, can you write at least three to five strengths for your son or daughter and be able to figure that out? And if you could just write yes or no in the chat box to Judy, that would be interesting to hear. If you have 3 to 5 strengths, or if you want to think about it a little bit more, that's okay too. But Judy, let me know if you get any responses to that area of strength.
I sure will.
I'll give you a minute or so.
So what Norine would like you all to do is in the chat box, list, if you're a self-advocate, any strengths. And then if you are a family member or your loved one has a disability, what they believe and what you believe are their strengths. So I haven't seen anything yet, I don't think. At least it's not showing up. Oh, there we go. Hyper-focusing, drawing, designing, mathematics. That's great, Stephen.
Yay, Stephen. Yeah.
Creativity, huge, Courtney, huge. Math and reasoning. These are all great, great strengths. Goal-oriented, a people person and can take care of myself. That's fabulous. Mechanically inclined, good problem solver, takes direction well. High energy, that's fabulous.
My husband, who's a
Around
doctor.
people, joyful and curious, family advocate. So my strength is expressing his wants and needs, how he brainstorms things differently, reading, socializing, eager to do things for self and others, likes to serve others. That would be me too. And creative, that would not be me, but the serving part, absolutely.
Yay.
Thank you for your answers. Go ahead, Norine.
Those are fabulous. I will tell whoever said high energy. My husband is a retired oncologist, a doctor, but when he would talk about his nursing staff, he says, well, that if you want to get something done, hire the hyperactive. So, because that high energy gets things done, and that's, boy, it's just putting it in the right place for the right purpose. Also, lots of, serving others. Wow, there's lots of opportunity out there. I could think of a couple of good internships as we speak that would be possible. So very good. And you know what I found when we started doing this kind of work and person-centered plan, this is actually a person-centered approach that you can take. But when we started doing this 20 years ago with individuals, and promoting employment, is that this sometimes was a very difficult thing to do. We're talking about people's strengths, because what people are more familiar with are people's weaknesses, and where they're needing more support, or where they get in trouble, or what are the kinds of issues that we might be dealing with that is framing the picture that this person is not capable of a job in a typical workplace. So while we think that it's important to know these things, the reason why it's important is because you need to know how to provide the right support, and you need to be very, very aware of how of the workplace. You need to be very aware of the job match, so that you can avoid the problems that play into the weaknesses. Okay, and that there are plenty of jobs out there where you can kind of format it in a way to where you can that this is no longer an issue. That's become very important for Ricky, right, Ricky? Yeah.
Yes.
Because you had a job once at a Pizza Hut answering the phone, and that didn't work,
No.
right? Yeah, and that wasn't the job we gave you, but that was a job you had from your previous provider. And then and Edwards had jobs that didn't work for him, and so that's and I'm sure that if you guys looked at all your own personal work history, if you're a parent, we think about all of the jobs that we may have had in our past, and what worked and what didn't work. So you kind of carve out the work that you can do in a place that you can work, and having the right kind of people surround you is really important. But here are some of the weaknesses that I think that people have identified, self-advocates have identified as issues for them, or have demonstrated to us as issues. And so all of these are ones, though, that again, if you think through where we are with a person, and what is it that caused, for instance, the one that's easily frustrated and start biting, they start biting their hands. It's like, what is it that happens to where that they can then calm and not be put in a situation where that frustration is going to even occur? Or if it's going to occur, is something that's happening, what is their reaction to it? Do we include that in our training so that that person can exit in a safe way? So for everything that would be written up on this page would be one that what is our, there is a possible response to it. And a good job trainer would be able to help us devise that. There are some medical issues that, you know, certainly get in a way. I think when we think of a person who has, for instance, a seizure disorder or a, or their illnesses or things that might be getting in the way, that we might be actually devising something that's much more along the lines of a self-employment, or we might be creating something that is that the way that the work is set up, that the work is set up at home, so that they're not as threatened, or it's more flexible, or that there may be other ways to deal with that. So again, I'm going to not go through the list like I did before, but if there is a weakness or a challenge or an issue that someone wants to mention and put into the chat box, that might be a good way to address the area of weaknesses. Because
So what you can do is just type in what challenges you might have, weaknesses, and if you don't want to share them publicly, feel free to send it to me privately.
Right. Or if there's something you want us to mention or talk to.
I guess people are thinking about their weaknesses.
Yeah. I think that one of the bigger challenges too is for many individuals would be if there is a psychiatric or mental health issue.
Those are really, really challenging. One person wrote, shuts down if something is too hard, low energy, obsessive, anxiety, and fear of failing. Okay. And I think it is really hard.
Absolutely.
We all want to be given opportunities, but we all need those opportunities in a different way.
Right. And again, even with that list, you know, there can be this this growing curve, you know, in terms of, okay, I'm going to take this piece first, and I'm going to create my personal comfort level with this goal, and then move to the next goal. That sometimes what I find, even for myself, is taking on too much too soon, and that had I taken it much more progressively, and my training being, you know, kind of more thoughtful, that I probably wouldn't have gotten so blown out of proportion and then just shut it all down. So there's different ways of approaching it, but I think knowing it is probably the part that is important here, so that people can address it and can help, as opposed to using it as a reason to not work. And that's really different. So let's move on to the next part of the SWOT analysis, which is opportunities. And I've kind of, and I think people kind of shut down because the strengths and the weaknesses, those are both internal. Our opportunities and our threats are external. Those are the things that are happening outside of our world, and that we identify. And again, I think part to some extent, we identify with the threats much more than we identify with the opportunities. The opportunities are there. You kind of have to dig some of the stuff up, though, and figure it out in terms of how do I identify those opportunities. Remember, on the strengths page, we talked about a variety of things that a person can do. Well, for every individual, you know, whether it's Ricky or Ed or myself or Judy, for every individual, if you were looking for a job, what I would want you to do is to identify at least 3 things in your life that you would say are really important to you. Okay. And Ricky's was his ability to talk, his ability to speak and talk and advocate for others. That was hugely important to him. He did that throughout his entire facility career. That was one of his personal stories, is the number of people of his peers that he helped who couldn't talk. True. Because he understood what they needed, right, Ricky?
Yes.
And so that is hugely important to Ricky, is that he wants to help other people and to use his voice in order to do that. Another interesting thing about Ricky is his love of sports. He starts talking about sport. I'm not there with him on the same page. I could laugh
Right.
about it. I enjoy hearing his stories. He loves sports, right? The other thing about Ricky is his love of travel, right? So those are three things, right? And when you think about those themes, where does that fit? I mean, there's a lot of different places that it fit, and you could start thinking about where are those opportunities then in terms of those themes. And so I use this example here: the cooking, being tidy, being an organizer, being an artist. You know, we looked at the tasks and then we added a theme: culinary arts, organizer, artist, athletics. Those are themes, okay, matching up to the person's individual strength. So if I was looking at those and then I walked down, you know, my neighborhood or rode my bike or drove my car around my neighborhood with those themes in mind, for culinary arts, there's a local deli, there's Arlen's, there's Robinette, which is a catering shop. For organizer, there's a Container Store, there's Me's Gift Shop, which is just down the street. For artists, there's Michael's, the Frame Shop, Texas Art Supply. And for swimming and, you know, athletics, there's the Putt Golf, there's Top Golf. So if you look at it from these themes, and then you literally do, like, what's in my neighborhood? What is around here that match not your specific skill, but your theme? Okay, but you take off any kind of other issue that you might have in regards to what I can't do, but you just think about that theme. Think of all the businesses that are in the area that match that theme. And please notice that I didn't put on the usual grocery store, you know, Kroger's, Lowe's, Walgreens. I've seen those a lot in People's, but you can still have them. But I'm just telling you, there's a lot more out there than what we give it credit for. And we should be looking at those small businesses as our organizers. All right. And so when you think of that, thinking of those themes, and you might need some help with that, so let me know. But then here's the threats. And these are the ones that I think are the ones that stop people. And again, the threats are external. But just like there being weaknesses in an internal way, there are probably answers to the threats. For every threat, there's a response. Some of them, most of them we can get over. Some of them we might not be able to, but most of them we can. The safety one, I knew a parent who would not let her daughter take the bus to work because of the fear that their daughter, something horrible would happen to their daughter. So what we did was we set up a series of safe places and safe people that she knew, so that she could take the bus to work and wouldn't be dependent on mom to drive every day, because mom was older and getting older and really didn't want to drive anymore. But the daughter then also had her freedom of being able to use the bus. And she also went through a lot of classes to know strangers and to know safety and where to go. So that was a big piece. The loss of Medicaid and SSI benefits. I have a benefits planner that works for Imagine Enterprises who basically says that if you are in Texas and you are on Medicaid, that it is almost impossible to lose the Medicaid, which is the health and long-term services part, not necessarily the cash part, but you can stay on Medicaid. Ricky is actually earning around, can I disclose your earnings, Ricky? Is that okay? Ricky, are you there? Am I still talking to you guys?
Yeah, you are. He may have stepped away for just a minute. His picture went away. And he
okay.
himself, so he may have stepped away for just a moment.
So like I said earlier, Ricky no longer receives his cash benefit, his SSI, but he is still on Medicaid. And that is not through the Social Security Administration, that's through HHSC, Texas's Health and Human Services Commission, and the Medicaid buy-in. So other issues that may happen, you know, leaving school is pretty scary for most people, because the support system shifts, it changes, and you may not feel like you get the support. So not being eligible for VR services, which would surprise me at this point, but that may be an issue that y'all want to bring up now, and as I kind of wrap this puppy up. Okay, so this is for those that survived World War II. My dad did. And but this is something that a good friend of mine
I love it.
Printed up on a shirt, and it seems so perfect for the pandemic, is to keep calm and chive on. I mean, there is going to be a future, and there's a future for all of us. You are all should be, you're kings and queens and princesses and princes in your own right, because the amazing work that you do and the amazing effort that you put forth. So here's the email addresses for both Ricky and myself. So let's get on with some of those questions then, Judy. And
yeah, that would be great. And if you want to stop sharing your screen, so that way we can see everybody. And also too, for those of you who do have to leave, I put in the survey link in the chat box. It's important, even though I think this was amazing today, we want your feedback. That's how we learn, that's how we grow. So please make sure that you complete the survey. And if not, I will be sending you a gentle reminder on Monday. But they're confidential, so don't worry. At least I think they're confidential. And even if they aren't, don't worry. I respect your opinion. So I think that the feedback that I was getting from people privately was that, not getting that support in school from the ARD committee. And if you are one of those people who emailed me, I can connect you with people who can help. Some people charge for their services, some people are free. And it's important because the purpose of your loved one or your student having an IEP, which stands for Individualized Education Plan, correct me if I'm wrong, I even get my acronyms mixed up, is to, when the student graduates, to prepare them for post-secondary education, independent living, or employment. So if those needs are not being met, that's a problem. And there are post-high school programs. In my case, for my son, I had him stay an extra year at his high school. And he took some extracurricular activities. He volunteered in the cafeteria. He was an office worker, and he volunteered in the library at the school. So all of those things had him integrated. He was working, he was getting experience, and then our portion of the Houston Independent School District opened up a post-high school program, and he did that for a year. And from that year, he was then hired on in a school cafeteria, and he worked there for 3 years. And that was great. He was making $12 an hour. It was incredible, working 20 hours a week. He still kept his SSI, still had his Medicaid. And something else I want to mention is he does have private insurance through his father. We're divorced. And so he has the private insurance as the primary and the Medicaid as the secondary. So that's really important to know that you can have both. So everybody has a different path. And I really, really encourage you. We all have our fears. But I encourage you to reach out to Ricky, to reach out to Norine, because they talked about a circle of support. That circle of support is really, really important. And Ricky talked about his, and sometimes people come in and out of that circle of support. And circle of support may not always be family members. Maybe it's neighbors. But the circle of support, they're not people who are paid. For those of you who joined us when we had Laura Buckner in our first session, we talked about people who are paid to help us and people who are not paid. Sometimes we may only have people in our circle of support that are paid, and that's okay. But we also want to have people who aren't paid. They're doing it because they love you. They want to be there for you, and they see the importance of being your circle of support. So questions for Norine, because there was a lot of private messages to me that I believe I addressed, but if you have a specific question for Norine and Ricky, and you don't want to ask it, feel free to either private message me or feel free to unmute yourself. But I strongly encourage you to reach out to them, because several of you expressed your personal challenges and weaknesses and fears. And we couldn't go through it individually right now, because Norine and Ricky would really have to dive into what your specific needs are. But if there's sort of a general question, by all means, please ask. But you all got amazing feedback, I must tell you. Amazing.
Thank you.
Good. I did want to mention that, because I know that we talked about Texas Workforce Solutions, Vocational Rehabilitation Services, and the pre-employment transition services for youth in schools, that you do not need to be a fully, evaluated person to receive those services. They have something that's called potentially eligible. And that referral to vocational rehabilitation actually can come not from you, the parent, but from the school teacher.
Right.
And they give them enough diagnostic information. You should have it in the IEP so that they have your permission, because you as the parent, if your child is under the age of 18, you have to take on that responsibility of the permission. But if you ask for it and you say, I really want them to start receiving this pre-employment service that VR can offer, that teacher can use their diagnostic information. They usually just send over the IEP that shows the diagnostic category, and refer. And it's not just for people in special ed. It can also be for 504.
Exactly.
And it's called, and the student gets or the young person gets a label of potentially eligible. And that's all they need to get in the classes. They don't have to go through any more evaluations. They don't need any of the other stuff, but they do need the cooperation of the school district.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Sometimes that can be difficult, I understand, but
definitely.
That's the way to do it.
And Leonella, hold on one quick second. So someone had asked me about what is the age when these pre-ETS services should kick in, or when? It's when they enter high school. So in 9th grade, that should be happening. And each school has a vocational rehab. That's what VR stands for, vocational rehab counselor. If you're not sure who yours is, ask the person at the ARD committee who is running it. They should be able to tell you who that is. And if you're not happy with someone, like especially when you're an adult and a self-advocate, we've gone through 3 or 4 different voc rehab counselors for my son, and they just weren't a good fit, some of them. And the one who was a great fit moved away. How dare he? Really? So it's really important that you feel there is that right fit. But yes, pre-ETS should start in 9th grade. Leonella, you had a question?
Yeah, I think you kind of answered it, because it was referring to that, because my son just turned 14. So laterly in that process. And that's one of the questions they asked us. They gave us 3 options, and they were like, or you can choose your own to come in and be here during the IEP meeting.
And then Jean wrote, and this is great, SWOT analysis should be for each student, and they should be given to the high schools. Right on, Jean.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Josefina.
Yes, so I have gone through this process through TWS for one of my twins with special needs, and they kept bumping us to different service coordinators, and they told us, I signed up one of my other twins and she's already fully accepted and receiving services. The other one, completely bad. It's been a year and no services yet. And I feel that the worker that finally got us, they kept saying, well, she has medical conditions. That's why she cannot be seen by this. She cannot be seen by this. And then we've got a new service coordinator, and she has no idea about what services are there. I'm actually providing her with some input. And I asked her, give me a list of people who need to evaluate. Oh, she needs to be fully evaluated before she receives services because of the nature of her disability. And she provides me 2 providers, and I'm like, that's all TWS provides for as means of. So anyway, I'm very unhappy about what's going on. One of my twins, excellent services, and the other one, we're still waiting a year after. So what can I do to empower myself and get the ball rolling? I send in paperwork, they lose it. I have to send it again. So it's been very badly managed.
So frustrating. Norine?
Yeah, you know, the process I've used is that, but again, I'm kind of in the system probably a little bit more, is there's the counselor, that's usually the person that's interacting with you. There's an area manager, and then there's a regional manager. And so what I can do, if you want to write me an email, okay, is I can go into, you're in the Houston area, right? Or no?
No, I'm in Fort Bend County.
Fort Bend, oh, well, even Fort Bend County, that's fine. So is I can find out from your local office who the next step up is, because they don't want the state to actually get a complaint, you know, because that causes all kinds, that just holds things up even worse, I think, sometimes when we send in complaints. But if we bump it up a notch, that we usually we can get the answer much quicker.
Well, I appreciate it. And another thing, what happened in our high school is that they invite the caseworker for TWS and they never show up, and parents don't understand all the rights they have. So I got tired of this bureaucracy. I said, give me the name, I'm contacting them directly. And parents don't get it, that there are our current quote unquote work for manager said, just tell me what you want for your daughter, we have the money. And I'm like, oh, really? Well, this is what I want. So the means are there. I'm just ignorant on how to tap into those resources. And she's not helping me much. But for parents to know that Texas Workforce Solution has the money to help your child, it's just a matter of getting to it.
I agree.
Very well said. Very well said. And you're absolutely correct. They actually need help spending money that's been allocated to them through that federal legislation that I mentioned earlier. Okay.
If we have missed any questions, please feel free to email me, Norine, or Ricky, and we will get back to you. As I mentioned, please complete the survey. The survey link is in the chat box, and I will be sending you the slides as well as the recordings, but it will probably take multiple emails because they're really, really large files. So I really want to be respectful of everyone's time. It's 12:32, and I cannot thank you all enough for joining us today. Some of you had spring break. Some of you, I know it's been a very long week. Some of you I know would rather have been sleeping. Ricky would have rather been watching a baseball game, so which would not be on my radar screen. I'm with you, Norine. It's like, oh my God, I'd rather watch paint dry than watch a baseball game. I'm so sorry. It just doesn't do anything for me. Basketball I like. So Leonella, thank you. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this, and many thanks to all of you. We are here at Family to Family Network, and we so appreciate you joining us. Our last session that was rescheduled from the winter storm will be on April 17th, so I'll be sending those gentle reminders again. But I thank you all so much for joining us. Ricky, Norine, the dynamic duo, thank you, thank you, thank you. I truly, truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate it.
My pleasure. Everyone have a great day. And again, follow up with me. You should be getting the presentations and everything by Monday, Tuesday at the latest. But if you have any questions, don't receive something, by all means, feel free to email me. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right.